Hi gang, so this is Christopher from DBG. If you haven't followed already, this is the first look at 10th edition, and we are currently on charge phase, page 30-ish I think. So please like, subscribe, all of that jazz. Let's have a listen to what the computer says the rules are, and we'll break it down each as we go along. So please like, subscribe, all of that jazz. Let's see if the charge phase has changed from 9th to 10th. So let's look at charge phase. We covered movement, we covered shooting. So now the next charge phase. And we covered command phase as well, obviously the first one. So let's have a listen, see if there's anything different. I know down here on where it says the red 1, 2 and 3 in a diamond shape, for some reason my computer doesn't like red. It just says black diamond, so do ignore that. I think there has been some strange words come up, but let's have a read and listen. Let's break it down for you. Let's say charge phase.
Charge phase. Warriors hurl themselves into battle to slay with blade, hammer and claw. Strident war cries and frantic screams echo through the whirling smoke as the moment of cataclysmic violence draws near. Use the following sequence to charge with your units. Black Diamond, select eligible unit.
Told you.
Black Diamond, select targets. Black Diamond, make charge roll. Make charge move. Black Diamond, repeat for next eligible unit. Charge bonus. Many warriors thunder headlong into combat, using the impetus of their charge to bring swift death to their foes. Each time a unit makes a charge move, until the end of the turn, that unit has the fight's first ability, page 32. CORULESJCHARGEPHASE. In your charge phase, if you have any eligible units from your army on the battlefield that you want to charge into close combat, you can select those units, one at a time, to declare a charge. Each can only be selected once per phase. Once all of these charges, if any, have been resolved, progress to the fight phase. A unit is eligible to charge if it is within 12 inch of one or more enemy units at the start of your charge phase, unless any of the following apply. That unit advanced or fell back this turn. That unit is within engagement range of any enemy models. That unit is an aircraft unit. Charging with a unit. Once you have selected an eligible unit to declare a charge, you must select one or more enemy units within 12 inch of it as the targets of that charge. The targets of a charge do not need to be visible to the charging unit. You then make a charge roll for the charging unit by rolling 2d6. The result is the maximum number of inches each model in that unit can be moved if a charge move is possible. For a charge move to be possible, the charge roll must be sufficient to enable the charging unit to end that move. Within engagement range of every unit that you selected as a target of the charge. Without moving within engagement range of any enemy units that were not a target of the charge. In unit coherency. If any of these conditions cannot be met, the charge fails and no models in the charging unit move this phase. Otherwise, the charge is successful and the models in the charging unit make a charge move each model a distance in inches up to the result of the charge roll. When doing so, each model in the charging unit must end its charge move closer to one of the units selected as a target of its charge. If you can also move a charging model so that it ends its charge move in base-to-base contact with one or more enemy models while still enabling the charging unit to end its move satisfying all of the conditions above, you must do so. The controlling player chooses the order in which to move their models. Charge roll, 2d6 inch. Targets of a charge must be within 12 inch, but do not need to be visible. If the distance rolled is insufficient to move within engagement range of all targets while maintaining unit coherency, the charge fails. Cannot move within engagement range of any unit that was not a target of the charge. If the charge is successful, each model makes a charge move less than or equal to the charge roll, and must move into base-to-base contact with an enemy model if possible.
Okay, so some slight changes. Really the only one is that it gets the ability of strike first ability. And there's things in the game that are already going to give you strike first. So that means there is going to be an order of all the strike first things. So it's quite simple in that sense. But apart from that, you don't need to see an enemy to charge. Yeah, that's pretty standard already. Bear in mind about certain terrain blocks movement. So consider that. And you have to be in coherency when obviously you're charging, and you can't select one thing being an engagement range, which is 1 inch of a non-charging or non-selected unit. Pretty straightforward. It's exactly the same as what it is now. It does mean that you can, put blocking units in front where they have to charge that before they can charge the juicy units behind. Pretty straightforward stuff.
Possible. Charging over terrain unless otherwise stated. A model can be moved over a terrain feature when it makes a charge move, but not through it. A model can be moved over terrain features that are 2 inch or less in height as if they were not there. A model can be moved vertically in order to climb up, down and over any terrain features that are taller than this, counting the vertical distance up and or down as part of its charge move. Models cannot end a charge move mid-climb. If it is not possible to make a charge move as a result, the charge fails. Models can be moved freely over terrain features 2 inch or less in height. Models cannot move through terrain features taller than 2 inch, but can climb up and down them. Charging with flying models when a model that can FLY starts or ends a charge move on a terrain feature. Instead of measuring the path it has moved across the battlefield, you instead measure its path through the air. In addition, it can be moved over other models as if they were not there. A model that can FLY cannot end any move on top of another model.
Sounds like it's swearing at me.
FLY models can move over other models when they make a charge move. FLY models that start or end a charge move on a terrain feature measure distance moved through the air when they make a charge move. Core rules I charge phase.
Okay. So that's just to confirming the terrain. Flying creatures can obviously just move, ignoring the vertical. But otherwise you just can't move through terrain if it's more than 2 inches. This does make buildings really interesting at the moment. Then there might be a set of rules when we go into it for specifically around terrain. But as it stands at the moment, if you've got that classic L shape building and you plant a unit in the corner, an enemy trying to charge you would have to go completely round the sides to get to you. Interesting, you fight through. It hasn't clarified if you can fight through terrain. Just you got to be to engagement range. So in theory, if you're right by the base and they charge you and they're 1 inch away from you, does that classify as engagement range? And that is a little bit like it is at the moment. Obviously you could just move through terrain. And there might be different exceptions on vehicles, infantry and things like that, just being able to move through things, but they haven't done that as any picture examples at the moment. I think it makes terrain a lot more interesting, a lot more tactical around it, and also having too much terrain is going to really limit certain armies, not only from blocking line of sight, but also being charging and moving. Just going to really narrow some shooting lanes and things like that are going to be really dominant in the game at the moment, what I'm reading. So if you've read more, let me know in the comments what you think of that. But yeah, let's carry on.
Charging over terrain unless otherwise stated.
Next is just a picture of a nice orc charge. Got the mechanicals. Like dread claws and big dread claws. Mega dread. Come forward, then orcs and charging. And then we've got fight phase.
Blades ring like hammers on anvils. Carnage engulfs the battlefield as the warring armies meet head-on. Fangs and claws crunch through bone. Blades ring like hammers on anvils. Blood spurts and flesh tears as hate-filled foes tear one another apart. In both steps of the fight phase, players alternate selecting eligible units from their army, one at a time, starting with the player whose turn is not taking place, and fighting with them. Note that a player cannot pass or opt not to fight when they have one or more eligible units that could fight. They must select one of them to fight.
Interesting.
In both steps, a unit is eligible to fight if either or both of the following apply. It is within engagement range of one or more enemy units. It made a charge move this turn. No unit can fight more than once in the fight phase. In each step, if all of one player's eligible units that can fight during that step have fought, the opposing player can then fight with all of their remaining eligible units that can fight during that step, one at a time. Once neither player has any eligible units to fight with during the current step, you progress to the next step. Once all eligible units have fought in every step, the fight phase ends. The player's turn then ends and, unless the battle ends, the next player's turn begins. Note that after an enemy unit has fought and finished its consolidation move, page 35, it might be that previously ineligible units are now eligible. These units can then be selected to fight during the remaining combat step. 1. Fights first. In this step, all eligible units with the Fights First ability fight, pages 33 to 36. Remember that this will include units that made a charge move this turn and that have a charge bonus, page 29. Fights first. Some warriors attack with blinding speed, landing their blows before their foes can react. Units with this ability that are eligible to fight do so in the Fights First step, provided every model in the unit has this ability. 2. Remaining combats. In this step, all remaining eligible units fight.
Comebacks.
This includes any units with the Fights First ability that were not eligible to fight at the start of the fight phase, but have since become eligible to fight. The fight phase is split into 2 steps. Units that have the ability to fight first do so, followed by any remaining eligible units. Black Diamond fights first. Units that can fight first do so.
Got a character called
Remaining.
Black Diamond now.
Combats. Remaining units that can fight do so. Core Rules J Fight Phase. Fight.
Okay, so it's pretty simple in that. You got to fight first, you fight first. If you charge, you got to fight first. But it takes it in order. So if someone's got to fight first, it'll be the player's turn decides the order of what goes. So they'll pick one, and then the next will be another fight first. Obviously, it's very rare there's that many things with fight first. It tends to be like an elite or special character or warlord or Slanesh if they're going to introduce that side of things. So if I charge you, I go first, I pick that unit. If you've got a fight first thing, that'll be next, and then it will go in order. In a sense, exactly the same as what it is now. It's just confirming it a little bit more. There isn't something additional. It'll be interesting what interrupt gets you. If interrupt gives you fight first, and then exactly the same seasons in there'll be someone attacking first, and then the interrupt afterwards, because of the order of how things are. Okay, so let's look in what actually happens. You've made your charge. Now you're going to roll some dice. Let's actually fight. Has anything really changed here? I don't think so, but we'll see.
Fight. When you select a unit to fight, it first piles in, then its models make melee attacks, then the unit consolidates. Core Rules I Fight Phase I Fight. 1. Pile in. When a unit piles in, you can move each model in that unit that is not already in base-to-base contact with an enemy model up to 3 inch. This is a pile-in move.
You can.
For
You're
a
gonna
pile-in
have
to be possible, the unit must be able to end these moves within engagement range of one or more enemy units and in unit coherency. If these conditions cannot be met, no models in the unit can make pile-in moves this phase and you progress to making melee attacks with that unit. Otherwise, the unit can make pile-in moves. Each time a model makes a pile-in move, it must end that move closer to the closest enemy model. If it can also end that move in base-to-base contact with one or more enemy models while still satisfying all of the conditions above, it must do so. The controlling player chooses the order in which to move their models. Pile-in move, up to 3 inch. Every model that moves must end closer to the closest enemy model, and in base-to-base contact with an enemy model if possible. The unit must end in unit coherency and within engagement range of at least one enemy unit, or no models can pile in. 2. Make melee attacks. When a unit makes its melee attacks, before resolving those attacks you must first determine which models can fight, then select which melee weapon each of those models will make attacks with, then select the targets for those attacks. Which models fight when a unit makes its melee attacks? Only models in that unit that are either within engagement range of an enemy unit, or in base-to-base contact with another model from their own unit that is itself in base-to-base contact with an enemy unit, can fight. A model can fight if it is within engagement range of an enemy unit. A model can fight if it is in base-to-base contact with another model from its own unit that is itself in base-to-base contact with an enemy unit.
Okay.
Select weapon when a model fights. It must do so using a melee weapon it is equipped with. The weapons a model is equipped with are described on its datasheet. If a model has more than one melee weapon, it can only use one of them to make attacks with each time it fights, so you must now declare which it will use before resolving any of its attacks. If the selected weapon has more than one profile to choose between, a model can only use one of them to make attacks with each time it fights, so you must also declare which profile it will use before resolving any of its attacks. When a model fights, it will make a number of melee attacks determined by the attacks, a characteristic of the melee weapon it is using. Each model that can fight does so using one of its melee weapons. Each model makes a number of attacks equal to the attack's characteristic of its selected weapon. Select targets before you resolve any melee attacks. You must first select the enemy units that will be the targets for all of those attacks. In order to select an enemy unit as the target of a melee attack, the attacking model must be either within engagement range of that enemy unit, or in base-to-base contact with another model in its own unit that is itself in base-to-base contact with that enemy unit. If the melee weapon a model is using to fight with can make more than one attack, those attacks can all be made against the same target, or they can be split between different targets. Similarly, if a unit has more than one model, each model can make its attacks at the same, or different, targets. In either case, declare which attacks will target which units before any attacks are resolved. If there are no eligible targets, because there are no enemy units within engagement range, for example, then that unit cannot make melee attacks this phase, but it can still consolidate, page 35. Select targets for all attacks before any are resolved. Attacking model must either be within engagement range of an enemy unit to target it, or in base-to-base contact with another model in its unit that is itself in base-to-base contact with that enemy unit. Make attacks. Melee attacks follow the same attack sequence as range.
Okay, let's just pause there, because that is a subtle, but I think quite a big change. So, obviously, fighting hasn't changed in a sense. If once your engagement range, you're 1 inch away, you can fight. The exception is no longer how many inches away from that model. You can also then do more attacks, almost like supporting attacks. So if you've only got models in engagement range, the front row, for example, anyone but who's not in engagement range cannot attack, even if they're in base contact with the models that are in engagement range, because the only way you can get almost like second line attacks is if the initial model is in base contact with the enemy. basically it's gonna be almost armies a bit more piled in that sense. You're not going to have like these, I'm 2 inches away from you, measure that, and then these can attack now. No, it's just a really simple, is my model in base contact with you? Yes. Is any of my friendly models in base contact with them? Yes, they can attack. That's it. It's actually going to limit a little bit of where attacks can come from as well. And base sizes as well, because if your base is big, actually it can be a bit harder, push back. But obviously, so it's really simple. If your engagement range 1 inch away, you can attack. If you're not within 1 inch away, then you need to be in base contact with another model in that unit that's also in base contact. Really thinking about it logically, I don't think it's going to change that much of the game. I think the more important thing is pilings. You've got to move closer, which is fine. If you can, then you need to be in base contact. It just pushes that combat a little bit more realistically, rather than having that string of army across the battlefield. But you don't have to pile in. It's can pile in. That was pretty obvious. Can move each model in that unit that is not already in base contact. As soon as you're in base contact, you're locked in a sense. Okay, making attacks, that's where we were.
Ranged attacks, see making attacks, pages 21 to 23, and you make 1 hit roll for each attack being made. If more than one enemy unit has been targeted by an attacking unit's melee attacks, resolve all of the attacks against one target before moving on to the next. If your unit is making attacks with more than one melee weapon against a unit, and those weapons have different profiles, then after you have resolved an attack with one of those weapons, if any other weapons with the same profile are also being used to make attacks against that unit, you must resolve those attacks before resolving any other attacks against the target. Note that all of the attacks you have declared targets for are always resolved against the target units, even if, when you come to resolve an attack, no models in the target unit of that attack. Core rules: I fight phase I fight. Core rules: I fight phase I fight.
Why repeating?
Remain within engagement range of the attacking model's unit, because of models being destroyed as the result of other attacks made by the attacking model's unit, for example. Resolve all attacks against one unit before moving on to the next.
Yeah.
Resolve all attacks with the same weapon profile before resolving any made with a different weapon profile. All attacks declared against a target unit are resolved, even if no models in that unit remain within engagement range.
Okay.
3. Consolidate. After a unit has finished making all of its melee attacks, it consolidates. Each time a unit consolidates, you can move each model in that unit that is not already in base-to-base contact with an enemy model up to 3 inch. This is a consolidation move. For a consolidation to be possible, the unit must be able to end these moves within engagement range of one or more enemy units and in unit coherency. If these conditions cannot be met, then each model in that unit can instead make a consolidation move towards the closest objective marker, but only if, after doing so, that unit is within range of that objective marker and in unit coherency. If these conditions also cannot be met, no models in the unit can make consolidation moves this phase and that unit's fight ends. If a unit can end its consolidation within engagement range of one or more enemy units, then each time one of its models makes a consolidation move, it must end that move closer to the closest enemy model. If it can also end that move in base-to-base contact with one or more enemy models while still satisfying all of the conditions above, it must do so. The controlling player chooses the order in which to move their models. Consolidation move, up to 3 inch. Every model that moves must end closer to the closest enemy model, and in base-to-base contact with an enemy model if possible. The unit must end in unit coherency and within engagement range of at least one enemy unit if possible. If the above is not possible, each model can move towards the closest objective marker, but this must result in the unit being within range of it and in unit coherency. If the above is also not possible, no models can consolidate. Core rules I fight phase I fight.
Okay, so that's slightly changed. We'll have a look at the pictures as well. I don't really think there's much in there, but some consolidation move happens after all the attacks are made. You had a good fight, and then you basically can consolidate. Well, it's up to 3 inches, and they have the first step is they have to be closer to the enemy model. If there's no enemy models that are closer around for some reason, they can then move towards the objective if they get in range of the objective. I don't think that is going to come up too much, because the consolidation move before doesn't mean you have to be engagement range. You just have to move closer to the enemy. So as long as there's an enemy on the field, it basically means nothing changes you're always going to be moving towards an enemy rather than an objective, unless suddenly there is no enemies on the field. Then you're moving to an objective, but then you have to be within range of it to do it. I don't think it's going to come up often, but I could be wrong. Then we got a little picture of Termagants getting beaten up by some vets. Simple dice rolls. Now we got on about the data sheets. And what's next after that? And data sheets, I think, pretty self-explanatory. You got 1, the name, 2, which is the profile, weapons, movement, toughness, save, wounds, and leadership, and objectives scored. Objective control, sorry. So this is the objective control is very different. This shows how effective a model can exert control over an objective. So if you've got one unit that's got a total score of 10 points on objective score, and you're engaging range with someone else who's got a total score of 3, then your unit with 10 will hold that objective. That's basically it. You then got abilities, which every unit will have some type of ability on here. So for example, it's just an example. Do you know what? This is one thing I would have liked, is that they use real data sheets or real examples just to make it a bit more live. You know, Primus Marine shoots does this, rather than just if a unit shoots, and when they put it as the example brackets. I would have liked that. Just I find it easier to program if I can relate it to a specific thing. But this unit, this example data sheet, core rules has deep strike, and then fiction is angels of death, and then it's got some other abilities as well. It's got 4+ invulnerable save. Quite good. In theory, could almost say this is like a Dark Angels Terminator with an example weapon. See what I mean? I just have power sword there. It just makes sense. Oh. And then they're going to have their war gear, and then their unit compositions, in a sense, like how many there are in there and what they're equipped with. So that's pretty simple so far, but let's have a read of the leadership.
Tests. If a rule requires you to take a leadership test for a unit, roll 2d6. If the total is greater than or equal to the best leadership characteristic in that unit, that test is passed. Otherwise, it is failed. Random characteristics. Some characteristics are a random value instead of a number. For example, a model's move characteristic might be 2d6 inch, or a weapon's attacks characteristic might be d6. When a unit with a random move characteristic is selected to move, determine the entire unit's move distance by rolling the indicated number of dice. For all other characteristics, roll to determine the value on an individual, per model or per weapon basis each time that characteristic is required. Aura abilities. Some abilities affect multiple models or units in a given range. These are known as aura abilities and are tagged with the word aura. A model with an aura ability is always within range of its own aura ability. A unit can be affected by more than one aura ability at a time, but if a unit is within range of the same aura ability more than once, that aura ability only applies to that unit once. Psychic weapons and abilities. Some weapons and abilities can only be used by psykers. Such weapons and abilities are tagged with the word psychic. If a psychic weapon or ability causes any unit to suffer one or more wounds, each of those wounds is considered to have been inflicted by a psychic attack. Core rules. IOTA sheets.
Okay. So a couple of things just to change on that. Leadership, so this is the biggest change in the game. We look at the example thing where this unit has a leadership of 4+. Before you put up quite a few additions, higher leadership's always been great because you've always got to roll under your leadership. 10th edition, it's rolling over your leadership, you pass. So if you got low, and this is where it's weird, you've got low leadership, that means you're really good at staying and you have good leadership. So lower means better in all the scenario. There's one thing I can take away from this at the moment. It's just something you're going to get your head around. But I think when you start playing and you're rolling dice, it will just be really simple and become second nature very quickly. For example, I roll 2 dice, average is 7. I have a roll more than a 4+ for this example. Terminator, arguably. Yes. For roll Snake Eyes, which normally would be like, oh, I'm brilliant. No, you fail, you're awful, you're running away, or you're not running away. You count as failed that leadership test. Random characteristics. It was interesting that you, if you got 4 models in a unit that have all got d6 number of attacks, rather than rolling it 1d6 for the unit, you judge it by model per weapon, an individual first. So you've got 4 models in there with 4 random characteristics. You roll each one individually, in a sense. Aura abilities, they just don't stack. If you got +1 aura to hit on another one, and a +1 aura to hit on another captain, for example, and a unit's in the middle, it doesn't get +2. And in fact, it's very clear that all across all the boards you can't get +1 or -1 on loads of different things anyway. So that's really simple. And then you're saying for a psychic attacks, there's nothing that's come up from that. There could be things in here that, cause more damage if it's from a psychic attack. So Office says it's immune to psychic attacks. I don't know. Could be. That'd be really scary if there was something that was immune to psychic attacks. But it's just illustrating that if a psyker is using it, it's considered that it is weapons, and it is done by a psychic. It counts as a psychic attack. So that is everything for combat. Fight phase and pile-in, all of that stuff. What do you think of it so far? I think it makes sense. I think the only issue at the moment is that terrain. I think that is going to cause a lot more problems than what people really think at the moment, unless there is something that we can see in like the infantry keyword that they can just move through any terrain. If that's the case, then it will make more sense. But as it stands at the moment, it's good blocking terrain, for movement. Then block it for engagement range, because you still be engagement range if you're touching the base of the scenery, behind scenery, and they're in 1 inch away from you, they're engaged. The thing that does affect it is pilings and having a second rank as well, and being able to fight, because obviously you're not in base contact. So I think that's the only thing at the moment I'm feeling it could just be a bit of a pain in the battlefield, but I'm sure it'll clarify on the specific units and what's going to happen next. So that is everything for this video. I'm going to try and get some more videos out, but let's see. We'll cover data sheets, not data sheets, development abilities, cool pictures, and stratagems next. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, all of that jazz. All appreciate it. Happy holidays. Happy holidays. Happy hobbying, and see you soon.